Ever find yourself staring at some everyday object, like a coffee cup, and wondering, how on earth did this thing actually get here to my hands?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like we kind of take for granted this whole intricate web that brings us, well, pretty much everything, right?
Absolutely.
So today we're going deep, deep, deep into the world of international supply chains, those globe-spanning networks that connect raw materials to factories to stores and ultimately to you and me.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack all of this, we're tapping into the insights from Masood Khan, the voice behind the Supply Chain Savvy podcast.
Right.
I'll admit, I can barely keep track of my own grocery list, let alone the journey of like a microchip or a t-shirt across continents.
Yeah.
But that's why we have an expert with us today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Glad to dive into this.
So I've been listening to Supply Chain Savvy, and Masood Khan, he uses this term a lot, global sourcing. Seems pretty straightforward at first, right? Like companies want to find the absolute cheapest place to make their stuff.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. But it gets way more complicated than that.
Oh, I bet. Like what else comes into play?
So imagine you're a company, right? And you see this factory overseas, labor's way cheaper. But then, boom, you've got shipping costs. Those can be huge. Then there's tariffs, import taxes, basically.
Uh-huh.
And quality control, that's a whole other beast when you're dealing with a factory that's like halfway across the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not as simple as just picking the factory with the lowest wages, huh?
Nope, not at all. And then, on top of all that, you've got these wild cards, these geopolitical events that can throw everything out of whack. I mean, remember that whole ship stuck in the Suez Canal thing?
Yeah, that was insane. How one ship caused like global shipping chaos.
Exactly, and that's just one example. Natural disasters, pandemics, you name it. It can all disrupt even the most carefully planned supply chain.
Wow, it's like a house of cards almost. You take away one thing and the whole system can crumble.
Pretty much.
Okay, so we've talked about global sourcing and all the things that can go wrong. But before we even get to those potential disasters, there's a whole other layer of complexity, right? Masood Khan, in his podcast, he talks about cross-border logistics and currency exchange rates, which honestly just sounds scary.
Yeah, they can be a bit much.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are the key things someone who's completely new to this needs to understand about these aspects?
So imagine cross-border logistics, like a giant, intricate puzzle. It's all about moving goods across borders, but it's not just about the physical transportation, although that's a huge part of it. Ships, planes, trucks, the whole shebang.
Right.
You've got to navigate customs regulations, which are different in every country, and make sure all the paperwork is perfect, or your shipment could be held up for who knows how long. And then on top of all that, you've got currency exchange rates constantly fluctuating, adding this whole other layer of unpredictability.
So it's like, even if you get everything else right, the price of your product can still change just because of the global economy.
Absolutely. Let's say, for example, you're importing electronics from Japan, right? And the value of the US dollar drops compared to the Japanese yen. Suddenly, those electronics just got more expensive for you.
Wow, so it's like playing the stock market, but with actual physical goods.
In a way, yeah. It's a high-stakes game, that's for sure.
It's amazing how much goes into getting something as simple as like a pair of headphones from a factory to our ears.
It really is.
Okay, so we've covered the economics, the logistics, the potential disasters. But Masood Khan also talks about something really important in his podcast, cultural differences. It's easy to forget that behind all these products and shipments, there are actual people, right?
Definitely.
So how can businesses navigate those cultural differences effectively when they're dealing with international partners?
It's all about respect and understanding. Like, a simple misunderstanding can derail an entire business deal.
Oh, I bet.
For instance, in some cultures, building personal relationships is essential before you even talk business. But in other cultures, that can be seen as unprofessional. Even something as basic as communication style can be tricky. What's considered direct in one culture might come across as rude in another.
That's fascinating. It's like learning a whole new language, but for business.
Exactly. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to learn and adapt.
No, I have to admit, whenever I hear the term trade agreements, my eyes kind of glaze over. It just seems so, I don't know, bureaucratic and boring. But Masood Khan mentions them in his podcast, so I guess they're important.
Oh, they're definitely important. They might not be the most exciting topic, but they have a huge impact on our daily lives.
Okay, so convince me. Why should the average person care about trade agreements?
Well, think of it this way. Trade agreements are basically like the rule book for international trade. They determine things like tariffs, which, as we talked about before, can make goods more or less expensive.
Okay, I'm starting to see why they matter.
And those agreements can have a real impact on what you see on store shelves and how much you pay for things.
Mm.
Remember when avocados were crazy expensive?
Oh, yeah.
Well, trade agreements played a big role in making them more affordable.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's all connected.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about a topic that honestly I knew very little about before. Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through this intricate world.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, the next time you're holding that coffee cup or scrolling through your smartphone, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey those products took to get to you. It's a global dance of logistics, economics, and cultural understanding, and it's happening every single day, all around us. And hey, maybe the next time you're struggling to keep track of your grocery list, you can find a little comfort in knowing that at least you're not managing a global supply chain. But seriously, the next time you see a made in label, you'll have a whole new appreciation for what it really means. Thanks for listening.